Hello, one and all, Jake here. Now, the Advance Wars remakes are sitting in Nintendo's vaults as we await world peace, I guess. These games are finished, they should have been released by now. And in fact, there's even someone who has been leaking some information. They got an advanced copy, and they've been sharing little tidbits. So the game is done. It's in a done state, and however it is, it just will be for the end of time. But my brain doesn't work like that. My brain does not stop working just because reality hits, all right? I have some really, really, really alright-ish ideas that I would love to see implemented in Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, and I thought it might be fun to share those ideas with you guys. And so without further ado, we will begin. However, there's a little caveat here. I want to say that none of these changes are going to be balance changes. If I did do balance changes, first of all, I want to gain some more experience before I make a video like that. And second of all, that video would be like 3 hours long and probably have a bunch of guests. So we're not doing that yet. I'm talking about broader changes that I would make to the game as a whole. And if you're not positive what I mean, then we'll just list the changes and then it'll all make sense, all right? Let's begin. Now, let's begin with what is going to greet you right in the face as soon as you start the software up is the menu. The main menu in particular. This needs to be fixed. We're in 2022. Like, I can't imagine that way forward, a studio that has made some pretty respectable games in the past would dare not fix these menus. But basically the problem is that in both 1 and 2 makes it a little better, but not much. The way the main menu works is you have this ratchet scrolling system where you just go down the list with all the game modes, except the text is so big, which is fine, but only one game mode displays in the center of the screen, and then you get like the 2 neighboring ones as well. But you actually have to wrap around the entire menu in order to actually find the option you want. Now, if you've been playing this game for 20 years, like some guy like me, for instance, then you might have, begin to remember the order that all the options are in. You'll be able to find things easily. But if not, then, it's not going to be so intuitive. And I understand that for a Game Boy Advance screen, has a low resolution and a low actual size. You can't really see text that well. Maybe that's why they didn't go for a more single screen, everything's in one menu, but that's no longer an issue. And that desperately needs to be fixed. There's no excuse for it. Ideally, the menu would have all of the options visible on the screen at once. And there are few enough options in both games where you can easily achieve that without compromising much. You could still have the design space you want to make it look cool and fancy or whatever, while still remaining pragmatic. And also, ideally, it's not a list that goes in, one vertical axis. It's a 2-axis sort of menu, like you would see in an actual piece of software made after the dinosaur age. But actually, we're not done yet, because even after the main menu, the other menu I sort of have a problem with is the campaign mission select menu. So in Advance Wars 2, they did this thing where you have like a little cursor floating around the screen, and you use the D-pad to move the cursor around the screen. It is like an extra layer removed from having a mouse control the cursor that makes it like very unwieldy and not fun to use. Yeah, it's cool that you could scroll around the map or whatever, but like I could just use the L and R buttons. There's really not much to see. That desperately needs to get taken care of. The Advance Wars 1 menu is a little bit better, but something I noticed is that when you have branching paths, when you select between different paths, there's a little delay as the the red dots lead to the location you're fighting at, there's like a little animation that plays every time you make a selection. It's not that big of a deal, of course, but it's really long term. It begins to wear on you. You should just be able to press up or down on the D-pad and choose the next mission. It doesn't have to be a whole song and dance. All right. Next change on the list. It's on the Nintendo Switch. The Game Boy Advance had 2 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, a D-pad, start and select. That's a really limited selection of buttons. Meanwhile, even if you take one Joy-Con off the Switch, wait. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you have more buttons than you would get on a GBA controller, all right? And if you're willing to compromise the ability to use an individual Joy-Con, then you have even more buttons to work with. And so my point in all this is you have more buttons, you better use them, all right? So one example is we have a Y button now. How about when you highlight a unit and hold the Y button, sort of like how the attack range shows when you press the B button, it'll show their vision. In Fog of War, it's really tedious to select the enemy unit, press the R button, see how much vision it has, and then manually count the number of squares away you are to see its range of vision, like you're some kind of jackass. Like, come on, just have a vision display, just like the attack range display, and that's all taken care of. That would be amazing. Something else that might be in order is normally you have to select a blank tile to bring up the menu. Instead of that, why not just have the X button bring up the menu? Right? I'm pretty sure they did something like that in Dual Strike. So, there's a precedent for it already. If I have to choose a blank tile on the map to open up the menu when the game ships, whenever that may be, I'm going to be very sorely disappointed. I think that's a very no-brainer sort of change you can make. Something a bit more dynamic you could also do is maybe you can hold down like ZL or something, and it'll have the cursor move 2 squares at a time instead of just 1 square at a time. That would be nice. Make it so that you could scroll a little faster if you so choose. Just a little extra bits of functionality that would make the gameplay experience slightly better. You'll be able to menu slightly faster and more easily. Advance Wars, just like all strategy games, is all about information, and whatever extra information you can get at a glimpse will really help you gameplay wise. So hopefully more buttons will be utilized in these remakes. Next, I want the ability to select your own army in War Room and in multiplayer. What the hell does that mean? So normally in the campaign, you're always Orange Star. Maybe you get joined by the other armies in some missions, but generally you're controlling the Orange Star army in Advance Wars 1. In Advance Wars 2, each army sort of gets its own little time in the spotlight. But, the campaign is one thing. There's a canonical reason why that particular army is fighting in that particular mission. And so, if you want to keep it that way for purity reasons, go ahead. What I am saying is that if I go to the War Room, which is like some random middle of nowhere battle that doesn't happen in the actual story, it's just like a scenario that they've set up, I should be able to choose whether I'm the Orange Star Army, or maybe I'm feeling Yellow Comet that day, or maybe even Green Earth. I should be able to choose the color of my army instead of only ever being able to pick Orange Star. This also should definitely extend to multiplayer. Player 1 should not be locked into Orange Star. You should have each player sort of choose their own army, and if one player has one army highlighted, then lock the other ones out of that. That's fine. But if I'm playing a 2-player match, I should be able to pit any 2 armies I want against each other. It shouldn't always be Orange Star versus Blue Moon no matter what. This is just a very minor aesthetic thing, doesn't really affect the gameplay too much, but I think that is something that anyone would want and probably doesn't take that much effort to implement. So it should definitely be in the game. All right, so now we're going to go into a very minor change that actually has some gameplay ramifications. I know, hold your horses. Chip damage display, what on earth do I mean by that? In the game, each unit has up to 10 HP, but they actually have 100, not 10. Yeah, when you attack an enemy unit, a little percentage comes up, and it's supposed to sort of round to the nearest 10 as far as the amount of HP the enemy unit has left after you're done the attack. But actually, the ones place adds up. Like, the percentage makes a difference. And so sometimes you'll have situations where you have like 16% left on a unit, and a attack that does 15% won't be able to kill it, but an attack that does 17% will. That comes up sometimes. And another factor here is that each damage roll has luck as a factor, and so you're never exactly sure how much HP your opponent's units will have, even if you keep perfect track of it. And you know what? I am totally fine with that. The change I would like to see is when you have your own unit selected, you should be able to see how much HP it has left down to the percentage. I shouldn't be left guessing whether my own unit has 16 or 15 HP left, and that could make a difference in a damage calc over whether I want to take an attack or not. It's totally fine that my opponent's amount of damage taken is only displayed the big 1 to 10 number. That's fine with me. There can be some variance, but having variance in both directions just kind of doesn't sit well with me. And I think that the game would benefit from you being able to see how much chip damage was done to your own unit. And the thing is, you can see, actually, if you look at the unit HP bar, there are very, small incremental changes that will be made depending on how much chip damage it's taken. Because of that, it's really not changing anything to have this. The only thing it would be changing is your ability to easily access the information so that you don't have to go and watch the replay or keep track in your head or write things down if you want to play optimally. That should never happen. Again, it's totally fine if you're having to guess sort of what your opponent's status is. Your own, though, that should be knowledge that you have, that you're aware of, and that you can factor into your gameplay. So another change I would love to see that actually has an effect on the product is I would like there to be more war room maps. And I don't just mean, the game ships with a couple of extra maps. No. I mean, I would love for WayForward to continue to support the game by offering downloadable maps for War Room. Eventually, we're all going to complete all the War Room maps with a perfect 300 score. And once that's over, there's no more single player to do whatsoever. So I think it would be really nice for the dedicated player base if more maps were steadily flowing in, at least for a year or two after the game releases. I think that if the map sharing features in the game are robust enough, which we'll get to in a second, then this really shouldn't be so difficult to implement. And it would increase the longevity of the game. It would make things a little interesting, keep us guessing, sort of. It's already been confirmed that there are some returning War Room maps from Dual Strike in the game, I believe. So if there were even more, that would be even better. Just trickle in the maps. I want a little trickle of maps. That's what I want. All right? Just a little trickle. I'm not asking for something huge like a 20 map pack every week for the next 52 weeks, all right? Just a little bit of something to keep biting at would be extremely fun. And it will make the game that little extra bit more worth the money than it already is. Now, speaking of DLC, there's other types of DLC I would love to see, not just maps. For example, what about having some Dual Strike COs as downloadable content? And you wouldn't even have to do anything fancy, like give them their own, special campaign missions or anything like that. Just have them usable in War Room and the multiplayer. I would pay $2.99 to have Rachel in the game, just like as an option. That would be real fun. Another thing, maybe some cosmetics, some extra costumes or color palettes for the COs. Color palettes already existed in the original Advance Wars games. Why not expand upon that idea a little bit and, maybe have Max dressed as Luigi and Andy dressed as Mario as DLC? I'm sure people would pay $1 for that. Like that would be fun. Just there are so many options that are explorable with something like this. You could even, what if, now hear me out. What if you had a Dual Strike unit DLC pack where they gave you the secret lab as a placeable building on the map editor, and when you capture a lab, it lets you spawn stealths, Uzium, and black boats. I think that would be an excellent idea, and I know I'm sort of like flagellating myself a little bit, just like complimenting my own idea, but like this is not rocket science here. There's so many different directions you could go in and make a little extra penny while you're at it. Way forward, if you're listening to me, consider it. All right, ask whoever is heading the release of this game at Nintendo if you could pretty please do this. Oh, another change relating to War Room. Yeah, so this one, I would like more War Room maps, but this is a different type of War Room map. What if we had a co-op War Room maps? You're Orange Star, your buddy is Blue Moon, and together you have to take out an enemy. Let's just say, I don't know, there's a pipe separating you two, and you have to break the pipe, and each of you only has half the funds of the enemy army. I think that would be a cool little scenario. Or maybe you each have a smaller base and the enemy has a giant base in the middle, and you have to sort of attack them from both sides, try to overwhelm them. I think those sorts of scenarios might be cool. You might say, but Jake, it's a turn-based strategy game. How is that functionally any different from if you just made those maps single player with one player controlling two armies, like certain campaign missions have? Yeah, why not do that? It could be co-op War Room map, but you don't really need a friend to play. You can also just do it solo, one player controlling two armies. War Room kind of feels like Orange Star versus the World a bit too much. Like I was saying when I was talking about how you should be able to choose which army you're using in the non-campaign modes. I think this would add some extra spice, an extra layer of strategy, gameplay, and it would be an extra sprinkle of fun for the whole family, all right? You could get your girlfriend over to play with you and carry her. I don't know, whatever people do. All right, guys, those things I just mentioned, those were little things. Those were very minor. Those didn't mean anything. What I'm getting at with these changes is stuff that if the game includes this, it will literally alter the course of history. The game will be in such a better place long term, and you'll have whoever made these design decisions to thank. All right, so this first one, robust map sharing. What do I mean by that? I want this shit to be like Mario Maker. All right, you make a map of any size that the game allows. You can upload it to some server, and then it also has a code that anyone in the world can type into their own system and then download your map. All right. Now, something very, very important to note here is that the maps that are included in Advance Wars for multiplayer games, they're not that great. All right. The community has had plenty of time to study the game and learn how competitive matches actually play out. And they've realized that we kind of need to do the work ourselves. We need to make our own maps, and that way we can have the types of battles that we want. There are no easily abusable spots in the map that certain COs just become broken on it. There are no annoying things you have to play around, or maybe there are annoying things you have to play around, but both players have to do it equally so that it's balanced. Little things to make sure that the maps that you're playing on are good and offer a fair, competitive, and balanced environment. The only way to do this with any sort of longevity is if you don't have to look at the map from a reference online and manually put it in your own editor in order to play on it. That doesn't make any sense. That is stupid. And a game like Mario Maker is fairly recent, but how about a game like StarCraft that came out in 1999? That had shareable maps. Yeah, that was a PC game, so maybe it was a bit easier to develop for, but the GBA Advance Wars games also let you save maps on the cartridge. Like, I feel like it's not that big of a stretch to be able to share maps across games. It seems like something that just should be allowed and doable. You shouldn't have to have a host who has all the maps already made on their Switch host a game for you. You should be able to just have the map on your own system. And if this isn't in the game, then it's going to be a lot more annoying and obnoxious to set up any sort of tournament or competitive game, even not a tournament, just like a fun little co-op session on a map that is actually balanced. It's going to be harder to come by if we don't have the ability to share maps in a easy, robust way that makes sense. You might think, historically Nintendo has not been on top of their game when it comes to things like this, but that's not entirely true. Super Smash Bros. Brawl let you share stages that you made in the Stage Builder online, and that game came out in 2008 on the Wii. Like, there's so much precedent for, just the bare minimum here. So hopefully WayForward got it right, and we won't have to play games against each other on Span Island and have player one win every time. Now, earlier I mentioned StarCraft. That's also the basis for this idea. There should be a replay feature. When I play a game, I should be able to download a replay and then use a code, or maybe I can only share with my friends. They can download it directly, whatever. Some way to exchange replays with each other of our, it could be a campaign mission, a war room, or a multiplayer match. Doesn't matter. There should be some mechanism that allows the other player to see your gameplay, and you can go turn by turn and analyze it. Look at what build you're doing. Look at where you're going on this map to get the highest possible score. Something to invite extra strategic discussion with the rest of the player base. There's no way this game is going to survive long-term competitively if we can't review our own gameplay at our leisure without a capture card, all right? That's just not going to happen. And another consideration is, even if you do have a capture card, your opponent's movement in Fog of War will not always be clear. In fact, normally it won't be. So you'll have nothing to sort of analyze on that front. It's going to be a black hole if there's no replay feature of any sort in this game. And if the game wants any sort of, serious future from a competitive gameplay standpoint, it has to have this. There's just no other way. It's a strategy game. There should be replays. You should be able to strategize looking at what people did before you. It doesn't even necessarily have to be shareable, like I mentioned earlier. Like you can even eschew that point. You should be able to see your own replays. And if this is lacking, that's very disappointing. And there would probably have to be a system level change to how the game is programmed in order to implement something like this if it wasn't already planned from the get-go. So I hope someone at WayForward had their head on straight when they were directing this game. That's all I have to say. Now, lastly, and probably most importantly, there should be some sort of online ranked mode. It doesn't actually have to be ranked necessarily, but there should be some way to go online, hop into a quick match against a stranger. Now, there are a lot of considerations for something like this, all right? The first thing is, how should it work? How should the matches be set up? Now, the way I see it is this. You go and click on the quick match mode against stranger, whatever you want to call it, ranked, whatever. You're matched against someone who is also looking for a match. And then the game presents you both with a map. The map is from a predefined pool that changes seasonally. And there are also some Fog of War maps and some standard maps. They're not necessarily the same maps. Some maps are just way better to play on Fog of War and vice versa. So you're both presented with a map, and each player gets to vote to skip that map and choose a new one. And so if either player votes to skip, then it chooses another map from the pool. Then the other player can skip, but not the one that already skipped. So you can't skip twice. You only get one skip. Of course, if the other player skips too, then it chooses a random third map from the pool, and that's the map you're playing on. Tough luck. Once the map is selected, you each pick a CO double blind. So I pick, my opponent picks. I don't see what they're picking and vice versa. Then the match starts. It's 1000 G per building, clear weather, nothing other than the default settings that you would expect. Fog either on or off depending on the map. You both go into the match, and you get to see which CO your opponent's picked by just hitting the info button and looking. But then how does the timer work? You can't just have no timer, because then your opponent could just hold you hostage in a match. So the way I'm seeing it is perhaps, having the same turn timer for every turn would be torturous. So you should maybe have a system like you get 10 seconds plus 5 extra seconds for each unit you have on the map. I think that's somewhat of a fair timer. You could play around with those numbers a little bit, do something that makes a bit more sense. But basically, as the battle gets larger scale, you get more time to think about your moves. The early turns, they shouldn't really be taking that much time. So you can eschew having a long timer for those turns. And if you run the timer out, then you don't lose, but play just passes to your opponent on the spot. And yeah, I think that's pretty fair. You play the game out until you're finished, and then whoever wins gains rating points. If they decide to implement a ranking system, they don't even have to do that. But the point I want to make is, if they don't have any sort of online matches against strangers, and you had to find an external community in order to play matches against people, whether that's friends you have already or people you're meeting online on a Discord. And I know ultimately those things are better than just playing against strangers online, but I think there's some sort of online warrior mentality that certain people have that will drive them to play the game against strangers more than anything. And to lose that type of player, I think, would be a defeat. And so online open stranger danger matches are a must in my mind. I mean, StarCraft has a perfect system of doing everything, and that game came out in 98. So, I mean, there's no excuse at this point. This should all be a given. However, small studio, Nintendo, yada yada yada. Maybe the resources aren't all there. I get it. It doesn't have to be state of the art, it just has to be satisfying. And hopefully, if maybe the game isn't shipping with some of these things I've mentioned, there's someone at WayForward who's watching this and is like, hey, that wouldn't be that hard to implement, and it gets patched in. I don't know. Just cracked out of my mind thinking, I don't know. Probably won't happen though. All right, so those are my ideas, but the video is still gonna run on for a bit longer, and that's because I actually asked the community over on r/Advance Wars. Actually, it was on their Discord, but I asked them what their pipe dream Advance Wars 1+2 reboot camp would be. What are some things you would like to see in the game, no matter how feasible it actually is to implement? We don't care about practicality or whether you realistically think it's gonna happen, just something you would like to see. And here are the ideas people came up with. So Ginyu here says, please God, just let them rebalance COs for multiplayer. Yeah, we're not doing balance changes just yet, but appreciate the thought. Another thing that would be nice as DLC down the road is the entirety of Dual Strike. Just add a switch to turn on Dual Strike with their units and all the tag stuff. This and a new side campaign. For example, it would be nice to see a side campaign in Advance Wars 1 for Grit and Sonya investigating Sturm, or maybe a side campaign of Sturm and Clone Andy wreaking havoc in the events that led to Advance Wars 1. Since in-game purchases are listed on the games page, DLC outfits would be cool to see. So I'm going to give you a +1 on the extra campaign DLC. I think that's a great idea. It's sort of like a better version of the War Room DLC idea I presented. The other ideas, I presented similar ones, but I guess great minds think alike. The legend herself, Zenesis Xenon, says, I kind of want a big overhaul to the map designer, allow for some limited scripting and allow some basic dialogue and events, and then get scenario maps shares going. And I think that's a really swell idea. Almost turn the game into like Advance Wars Maker, where you're making your own game as you go along, and that will increase the longevity of this game by so much. The extra playtesting that would come with map scripting makes it so that those QA people, they better be paying them a lot. But the idea is good. It's just I don't think feasibly it's gonna happen. Platinum Skink says, my dream would be that they include side quests that are original to Reboot Camp, extra maps in the campaign with their own new dialogue, scenarios, and maps, which would make it fun to discover as I'm playing the game I otherwise know pretty well. Would be fun to see what twists and turns WayForward could add when given a little free reign. So sort of like the extra DLC idea, but instead it's baked into the original game, and that is something I would love to see. Just a little something to keep people guessing. You're playing the game you played already a million times, and then all of a sudden you accidentally unlocked a new map. What the hell is this? There's a new story going on? What's going on? That's the sort of thing that would keep this game, it would bring this game to the next level. Clammy says, it would be cool if there were more than the original 4 colors to choose from. Having a color editor or something like that would be neat. Yeah, so I don't know about, having like a full hex palette of colors to choose from. Something like that seems like doable, but they probably won't do it. But being able to just choose from a predefined range of colors, that seems fine, and that seems like a great idea. Again, it would really do a lot to break the whole Orange Star versus the world feel that playing in single player sometimes has. Primal Tactics says, I'd like to see Advance Wars 1 versions of the Advance Wars 2 original COs, 2 sets of stats for each version of each CO, classic and competitive. The former would be their exact stats from the original games and using the campaigns, while the latter would be a balanced set used in War Room and ranked online multiplayer versus mode. Local and unranked online multiplayer would have an option to use either. So we'll go one at a time on a bulleted list, and this suggestion reminded me of something that I forgot to add when I was discussing my own idea for the online ladder. Sturm and Hachi and Nell, those are sort of like the secret COs, I guess. They should not be usable in online multiplayer. The rest, they're fair game. Even Colin and Kanbei are fine. They're in the game originally. You can't really take them out. That would be weird. Banning them would be odd. So just leave them all in the game. But those 3 in particular, they're like sort of secret additional COs. They don't seem designed with competitive multiplayer gameplay in mind. They kind of seem like extras. So any online multiplayer mode that isn't just friendlies, they should not be allowed. Anyway, it's all but confirmed that there are multiple versions of the COs in the game already. What's less clear is how exactly those are going to be implemented in multiplayer mode. Maybe there's like a Advance Wars 1 multiplayer and Advance Wars 2 multiplayer that are just completely separate. But I think having a toggle for 2 different versions of the COs, that would be nice. The extra competitive version that's like more balanced, that is something that would require a lot more thought. But, you know, in an ideal circumstance, having more options, it's just like having more COs. That's just more content, more fun for everybody. So not a bad idea. Placeable black cannons, lasers, fortresses, Armageddon missiles, and map editor, and 5-player maps. Again, more options, never hurt anybody. Oh, and different AI settings for versus mode, including ones directly based on Advance Wars 1, Advance Wars 2, and Advance Wars Dual Strike AIs. Campaigns would use the AW1 and AW2 AIs for normal and hard mode, maybe a third super hard mode which uses the hard mode maps with a more optimal AI setting. Not sure about War Room. So this suggestion also reminds me of something I forgot to mention, which is they need to fix the AI. I don't know if you knew this. You know, the AI in Advance Wars gradually got better as the series progressed, but in Advance Wars 2, you can exploit the AI if you know what you're doing, but I sure as hell couldn't off the top of my head present to you how. In Advance Wars 1, just put an APC on the map anywhere and watch them just like... It's like throwing a monkey bomb in zombies. Like every enemy unit just wants to take out an APC. It's kind of insane, actually. And it's very easy to exploit. The AI in Advance Wars 1 is completely deterministic, so whatever you do, the opponent will always respond the exact same way. This leads to some exploitation. The maps all have solutions that you could just post online and anyone can do them. Kind of takes the fun out. So they need to fix that. The Advance Wars 2 AI is probably fine, but, you know, obviously if there are some improvements from later on in the series that they can implement, I'm all for that. Lastly, we have this Sonya Lash role player who says, Lash, just Lash. Maybe also Sonya, but mostly Lash. Yeah, I don't think you'll have to worry about that one, buddy. All right, well, that's been, that was fun. I haven't recorded in a little while, so it was nice to get back into that. And with some, this was kind of a low pressure sort of video idea, so glad I decided to make it, even though I was super tired from work today. Now to get to editing, please comment your own ideas that you have for Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. Again, even though the game's already done, I know you all have ideas floating around in your head. Just comment them below, and you know, maybe some of them will intrigue me. I will have more videos coming in the future. The next one will not be an Advance Wars video, but probably the one after that will be. Yeah, I'm just going to keep making videos about things that interest me, math, certain video games, whatever the hell else I talk about, education. Yeah, that's, you know what you're getting into when you click on a channel like this and you hear a guy like me talking. All right, I'm not gonna pretend like it's super out there. Just subscribe and you know, get your brain jogging a little bit. All right, guys, take care. Adios. Au revoir. Goodbye. All right, lastly, and probably, oh my God, my foot, my tendon.